Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, The Ink Reader. I hope you had appreciated what I'm doing with statistics. I have thought about putting them at the beginning with some music. It has been a very long day and I am filming again with this light, which is not ideal. I had planned to come home and just film before the sunset. Unfortunately, I was dealing with an emergency, so instead of finishing at 5, I finished at 7:30, and I am filming now after dinner. Exhausted. It's been absolutely awful day. Started with a flat tire and it got worse and worse and worse. So bear with me. I'll try to be as succinct as possible with the books, just because I need some sleep, because tomorrow is all over again. The books that I did not finish, so the 4 books that I didn't get around to. Good news is that 2 of them, by the time I'm filming this, which is the 4th of October, I've actually finished other 2. So I've just got 2 that I've not finished at all, which are The Consumption of Magic. I'm struggling through these, unfortunately. Nothing bad with it, I'm just taking my time with it. And also I have not touched A Discovery of Witches, but again, I am still on the fence. I don't know if I want to give up on it or if I want to insist. I might try again to use it as a commute book where I don't have anything else to read, so I'm kind of forced to read that and then see how that goes. The other 2 books, because I'm going to discuss them in October, I'm not going to mention, because yeah, by now they're finished, but they're in the October, will be in the October wrap up. So without further ado, let's get into the books I've read, and I usually go in chronological order. So the first book I've actually finished was The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas, and these I started in August and I finished in the first days of September. I just had like around 300 pages left. This is a classic, and it's the story of this young man who's a sailor, and he is about to get married when he gets betrayed and he ends up being imprisoned for many years. And in prison he meets a man that tells him a secret that will push him forward to keep living and get revenge. Now, I was always being told that this was one of the best classics, in the sense that it's one of the most accessible classics. Consider that this was around 1,200 pages long. This is my Italian copy, so I did read it maybe quicker because it was in my original language. However, I do have to agree that to be such a lengthy classic, this is so accessible, and actually I have read it fairly quickly. This is 1/3, not even that, of the pages, and I'm taking like 3-4 months to get around to read it. This I've read in a month probably, because I did read it like after the 2nd to 3rd week of September and finish in the 1st week of September while reading other stuff. Really, the writing flows so nicely. I did overall love it. I get the hype. I now know why it's many favorite classic. I have to say that Monte Cristo, though, apart from the first chunk, then it kind of takes a back seat, and I was expecting him to be more active and less passive throughout the story, but I liked what the author did. I guess for back in the days, were very innovative as well. I said that a few things were a bit absurd to believe. I mean, the majority of things, like, come on, but again, it's a classic, so you don't really question it. Just like the ending, I thought it was very rushed. Like, there are some moments that are a bit more dull, and the ending that was very interesting was a bit rushed overall, which is weird to say about a book this big. So I wished he had spent more time toward the end rather than in some parts in the middle, if it makes sense. 4.5 stars though. I would definitely recommend this as a classic, but even if it wasn't a classic, I thought it was still interesting enough, and say I still recommend this. Then I read Parasite Eve. This was part of my Japanese horror pick, and it was, I'd say that it's more like a horror, scientific horror, where the premise is that you got this scientist and his wife gets in a car accident and she's declared brain dead, so they decide to donate her organs. However, the husband decides to keep part of her liver, I believe, or kidneys, one of the two, and try and experiment with it. Just, oh boy, it just was super slow for the majority of it, and then you get to 3/4 and you're hit in the head with the most gory, gruesome, disgusting body horror stuff, and and I don't even know how to describe it, and I didn't mind that beat in the sense that I'm here for the horror, so actually I did enjoy how gory this was. But I guess what rubbed me the wrong way was definitely that there is a rape scene of a child that's very much described, and I was like, why? Like, you know, stick with horror, body horror, like all the gruesome you want, but then just that, I mean, that was a big no-no for me. Also, I realized that I'm not probably too much into scientific horror thrillers. Regarding the science, I don't know how much it was true or not. It did sound pretty specific, and again, it was almost kind of boring for 3/4 because of all the science-y terms in it, and pretty much nothing was happening. I gave it 2 stars just because toward the end, the gruesome part, like very, very disgusting and horror. So I was intrigued by that, but many things were in poor taste. The majority was dull. So it's definitely 2 stars. It's definitely an experience that probably you don't want to have. Then for my book club, we read Things Fall Apart, and this is a modern classic, and it's the story of this man who lives in this tribe in Africa, and it's basically his story, and it's pretty short one, and again, everything that I say is probably gonna be a spoiler. However, this is the part of a trilogy written by this Nigerian author, and every book follows a different character though, for what I'm aware of. So this is kind of self-contained as well. I actually will probably check out the other books just because I really like his writing. I thought it was very simple but very evocative in some parts. There are some sentences and some small quotes that I absolutely loved. This book is very controversial though. It's full of violence toward women and others in general, and I don't know, I think I've read somebody say it was banned in some schools or whether, and I can understand why. However, I do think that this book is problematic because it's showing you something, it's telling you a story, and it needs to be violent, it needs to be very realistic in that sense. So I did appreciate it for what it was doing. I thought it was this a denunciation of many things, both on the local and more international side of things and religious part of things, but also was an introspection to the ego of a man who was raised to be this warrior who could never cry or who could never show any feelings, and how this has impacted him and people around him. So I did really enjoy it. I gave it full 4 stars, and I will continue on with the series. Also, like, can we just this cover, just stunning. That's publishers, that's a good cover, just saying. People Who Eat Darkness, this was my true crime pick for the month, and this is the story of Lucy. Lucy is this British girl that in the year 2000 went to Japan with her best friend to earn some money and just do an experience, and she actually never came back. And she was working as an hostess in a bar, where basically in Japan, these jobs as hostesses, it means that you are in this club where you spend time with men that pay for your company, but it's like they pay for your companionship, they pay to speak with you, or they might pay you for, you know, get out with them to a dinner. They don't pay you basically to have sex with them. I guess there are some extras for some, but it's not the average, it's not what happens usually. So she was an hostess, and she disappears after meeting a client one day, and I think there was back then a lot of controversy about what an hostess is, and a lot of people didn't pay much attention at the beginning of her disappearing just because they consider her, oh, you know, she's a sex worker or whatever, which was not the case. And this is her story, what happened to her, and I don't want to spoil anything because I think this actually as a true crime is very, very good. Now, I've read some true crime that I think you have to be in the genre to appreciate them. This one actually is so well researched and well written that I think it's very accessible to everybody. And also what I appreciated that for probably a combination of events also, but I'm sure that they also did it on purpose, the majority of this book is focused on Lucy and not whoever was the culprit of her disappearance. So I appreciate that, you know, the focus is on the victim, her family and her history. And so I came out of this book probably taking away more and knowing Lucy more, like Lucy as a figure has remained with me more than the actual culprit did, and that's something that usually it never happens in true crime. Like they focus like a lot on the killer or whether instead of focusing on the victims, which a lot of times are just like small paragraphs. So the fact that from this book I mostly remember Lucy and who she was and her personality, I just appreciated it. Well written, we pick up more by him. I thought the parents of Lucy in this, like, honestly, like people, like, I just don't understand like how in front of grief people can be still so awful. There's much that we will never know, which I guess is fine, but trust me that if everything that there is to know on this case is in here, well, up to the point where, you know, the author published it. So I'll be actually researching what happened after this, but loved it. I would definitely suggest this as true crime, even if you're not into crime at all. It's just it's brilliant and just so bloody interesting, especially because it's such, you know, it happens in Japan, so all the background is Japan and it explains a lot about the culture and what's going on. So it was like kind of a small window in a world that I don't have access to or will have never known if it wasn't for this book. Then I listened to Middle Game, and I found this on Scribd, and I was curious because this is going on all over the place a little while ago. This is what I'd call a sci-fi, and I honestly would not know how to describe a plot apart from that you have these two characters that have to save the world. Of course they have to save the world. There's a lot of time travel, but more than time travel, it's a peculiar kind of time travel in this, where basically these characters have to do and redo all over things until they get them right. So I guess that's also where things get frustrating for me. I like the writing, I liked the characters we have. I thought they were Roger and Dodger were just brilliant. However, I thought that not much happened. Like with this thing that time keeps folding itself and going back and, you know, relieving things and just changing small things to then change the bigger outcome, which I understand. I thought that wasn't very interesting. So I get to like 3/4 of this book and realizing that the writing had kept me there, but as I'm someone who's as much as character driven, as much as plot driven, if not more leaning toward plot driven as a reader, the plot was not very much there. There is the end, there is a lot of action at the end, which I did like. There are some side characters that I actually even loved more. But I did find the bad guys very one-dimensional, very cliche if you want, and although, you know, the action in the last quarter or so was interesting, it wasn't that innovative or nothing that blew my mind to redeem the fact that the plot in all the rest was very slow and not much happened. But I didn't mind this. I gave it 3.5 stars, but I would probably never continue on the series, and I guess other stuff by her I loved more. Yeah, I know, probably no popular opinion, but my horror, last pick for my horror TBR was 12 Nights at Rotter House, and I'm done officially with my horror TBR. I'll wrap that up soon when I go through, you know, that's my favorite and this is my least favorite. Let me give you a synopsis and what I thought about this. So the synopsis of this is that you've got this writer, he writes stories about haunted house, and then one day decides to go into Rotter House, which is a house that's just been purchased by this rich woman, and she's like, oh, I'm gonna transform this in a haunted house, and, you know, people will pay ticket to visit. So he says, before you do that, let me write a book about it, and, you know, you probably get more revenue this way because I'm gonna publicize the house, so you're gonna get even more customers. Although reluctantly, she agrees to let him go. So you start the book with him entering the house and explaining how he got there, and soon after he's joined by his best friend with whom he had fallen off a year previously. So he decided to invite him along and try to see if they can rekindle their friendship and move on from what has been going on. Now this is an exception to what I described, for example, with Middle Game, where, you know, you've got 3/4 very slow and then there is the action, but it doesn't make up for the rest. This is extremely slow. Like as a horror, haunted house horror, this is barely nothing happens for 3/4 of the book. But the couple of things that do happen creep the fuck out of me. Like the atmosphere. Like this man creates an atmosphere so eerie in such a quiet horror. For the genre is a very quiet horror that I I was impressed. The ending, loved it. Like it got me, like it just got me. I didn't guess it. I had some hints here and there, I guess like half a thing, but when the end came, the revelation came, I was like, what the fuck, like this is genius. It did remind me of one of my favorite movies ever, which I'm not gonna give out because of course it'd be a major spoiler if you've seen the movie. So maybe I loved it that much because it resembled so much that movie in terms of the plot twist that it's in it. And apart from the ending, the fact that again it creeped me out when not much was going on, just it takes skills. This man has them, and I love this. And I give this 4.75 stars. That's very high for a book that for 3/4 like, okay, I am creeped out, but the end is gonna, make it or break it, if it makes sense. And it definitely made it. So then for my non-fiction pick, I read In Order to Lead, and this is the story of this woman who escaped from North Korea. This is a very popular non-fiction, and this is just humbling read. And I guess I had like the feeling that I was reading something about, World War II, or that I was reading something that happened a century ago. And then when you realize that this girl is just a tiny bit older than I am, and then this is actually going on right now while we speak, and just mind-boggling. It's just, I don't understand how this is allowed to happen. I do understand why, by the same time I don't, and you know what I mean. This woman is extraordinary. I do believe that we can all be heroes, but some of us are born extraordinary. And this girl is one of them. Her willpower and her motivation to push forward, it was just extraordinary. And yeah, I mean, she just confirmed that, for me, some people are just born extraordinary. And I have to say that I read a lot of critiques about this book online, and a lot of people say, oh, she made this up, or this was not her story, or whatever. And I guess that people that are making those comments are missing the point. Like, the point is not, oh, did she hear her best friend? Did she hear a woman that she was being smuggled with tell this story, and then she integrated and made it hers? That's not the point. The point is that these things are happening. That whether it's her story, and I'm not doubting that it was, like, I'm not calling her a liar at all, but let's pretend for a second that these people are right and she's integrated stories in her own that are not actually hers. The message that you have to take away is that this is what's happening out there, and we are not talking about 200 years ago, which wouldn't make it okay, but it would make it like, it was a product of the time. Now you cannot even justify like it's a product of the time. It's a product of human greed, if you want, which is what it's so sad about all this. So I was just like, people there like questioning, oh, this might be her best friend, or this might be another woman living through this. Who will fucking care? Like, you should get away the point that we are living in a world where this is happening. And that's the problem. It's not her integrating stories from somebody else, even if she did do that. Who spent time proving this woman that she was a liar in certain things? Like, sit down, read this book, and then sit down and think, who must have done it? Why must have done it? And like, is that something that you really like? Do you really want to spend the time discrediting someone who's, at the end of the day, you can tell whether you want extraordinary? I mean, it's just like, people are fucking sad. When I read those comments, it makes me sad because it made me realize why this is happening still and why this is still possible, because there are so many of us that are just dickheads. And I'm sorry I said it, but that's the truth. Then I finished In My Commute 5 Ways to Fall. This is actually a romance book and was part of my finishing series. TBR, I had, this is a quartet of books, if I'm not mistaken, with like, it's a companion series, so each book you follow a different girl finding love. In this one you follow Ben, who was used to be a bouncer in a strip club and now he's a lawyer, and Louise, who is just recently divorced, went through a lot of trauma because of a divorce, and she's starting also to work as solicitor helper, which is not the right word. She also works in this lawyer office. They meet in Cancun, I believe. They have a weird encounter in Cancun, and then they thought none of it. We thought, we'll never see each other again, and instead they end up working in the same place. Now, I did like the banter in this. I mean, K.A. Tucker is one of the few romance authors that I read from. I really like her romance in general. I loved her series back then in the days when I used to read a lot of romance. Loved the banter into this between characters, like the dialogues was just hilarious. However, this does suffer from I'm not like the other girls trope, which kind of made me roll my eyes a lot. It's also, I'd say that it doesn't, like the romance doesn't progress as you usually would expect, which I did appreciate, but the end was predictable at the same time. So 3.5 stars, I'm happy I'm done with the series. Then I have finished Unseen Academicals. This is number 37 in the Disco World series, and it's part of a Rincewind sub-series from the Disco World, which is a humoristic fantasy. All of this book is about football, so it's a parody of football, and you've got the wizards that have not played football in centuries, and they found out that actually there is a tradition for which they have to play football, so they decide to train and play a football match. I really liked the beginning. It was a bit boring toward the middle, and the ending picks up a tiny bit. The issue I had with this is that I love the wizards and Rincewind as a characters, but Rincewind is mentioned probably 2 times, so I don't know why this is part of this sub-series. The wizards are there kind of a lot in the beginning, and then they take a back seat compared to other characters that I couldn't really care about. So that's why I didn't love this as much as others. It's still Terry Pratchett. None of the Disco World series book, and it's like 41 books, I've got below 3 stars. This is a 3.5 stars for me. Still loved it. I mean, this man, I could give less fucks about football. Like literally, like I care more about the reproductive life of a rock than I care about football. And I actually enjoyed this. I found it was funny. It still pushed me through like 500 pages. So the man has skills. By now, if you follow my channel or if you know about Terry Pratchett, like the guy can write. The guy is a freaking genius, was a freaking genius. But not the strongest one in the series. Rincewind is not really there, so don't go expect that. It's just a bit sad that it's my goodbye to the wizards, because I don't think they're gonna be any more in the wizard series. So this is bittersweet for me, but I loved seeing them again. And then miraculously, this month I listened to another romance, which is the Honeymooners. This was very famous again like a year ago or something. And this is the story of these twins. One is very lucky, one is very, well, not lucky at all. And the lucky twin always wins stuff. She's actually getting married, and she has her twin sister as her maid. So, and she has to put up with the brother of the husband that they cannot stand each other. While at the buffet, everybody gets sick apart from them too. So the brother of the spouse and her, like the twin of the bride. So they take on the honeymoon that the lucky twin has won, because it's not refundable, and because of the surnames and their physical aspect, they can pass on, the husband or the wife. They go on this honeymoon, not standing each other, and it's a romance, so you know what, this is quick, but this was bloody funny. I think as a trope of fake dating or whether, I didn't try many of those, and I did enjoy this, and I guess I enjoyed this for the banter more than for the trope itself. I do definitely hate to love relationships. I'd say that it's also not very graphic or too racy as a romance, so I guess it's, if you're not into sex scenes or anything of the sort, this is very accessible. There are no, that I can remember, of explicit sex scenes, and the guy was a bit of a douche, not the biggest fan, but together, like the protagonist, I love her. I liked how the story, yes, is about the honeymoon, if you want, but also progresses after that. And I definitely will pick up more by those authors. Funny story, I'd actually gone and thought I could go to bed, and instead I realized that I read another book. And that was The Rosie FX. Now this is the sequel to The Rosie Project, and Rosie Project is the story of this 40-year-old man, professor, that is on the spectrum, it's never said, but he has Asperger. And he cannot find a romantic partner. So in the first book, if I'm not mistaken, he puts out a list that basically it's kind of impossible to fill in all, you know, to tick all the boxes. And I don't remember if Rosie does tick all the boxes or whether they start hanging out and it's a romance between them two. And this is the progression of their romance. It's a trilogy in total, and I will definitely continue on and finish it. The reason is because, again, being not a genre romance that I reach for much, the fact that this was funny, super quick read, like honestly, I think I read this in a few hours, you know, throughout the month, not all in one sitting, but it was so accessible, so funny that I do want to know where this is getting to. I'm not the biggest fan of Rosie, and I do find that Don, the protagonist, the author, this is not own voice for what I'm aware of, and I'm not saying that he doesn't okay, but I think that Don is so robotic that I don't want people to get the idea of people with high functioning autism are this robotic, because they usually aren't. So they feel more human than Don does. But overall, funny, quick read. I will continue on. And that was it. I'm sleeping, basically. I'm already asleep. Like, I'm here with you talking, but in my mind, I'm already asleep. I'll see you next time, guys. Take care of yourself. Let me know in the comments down below what was your favorite read of September. Ciao!